Their commander does have a funny run, but it's not as good as Legolas prancing.
I've seen a lot of requests from you guys to check out the Return of the King review, because apparently there's a pretty cool surprise there. But I figured, if I'm going to be covering Lord of the Rings, I might as well be doing both of the games that Mandalore covered on his channel, so here we are. I've seen all the movies, I've seen The Hobbit as well, I've read all the books. That being said, I wouldn't exactly say that I'm a fan of Lord of the Rings. I mean, I really like Lord of the Rings, but I would never claim to be a fan because I can't remember most of the lore regarding Lord of the Rings. There may be time to time where I reference particular points in the movies, but I am almost 100% certain that there are many things that I do not properly understand when it comes to the lore. Maybe someday we'll check it out whenever I do get into a Lord of the Rings game. And as for my knowledge about this game, I know nothing. I think it's going to be an RTS though, just judging from this initial screen, so let's check it out. But actually, before we do, please do make sure to go and support Mandalore. Link to that is always at the very top of the description, as always.
Why? What is that? That feeling? What is happening?
Are you feeling things? Okay. I think he's working through the emotions right now.
It's hard to talk about fantasy without Lord of the Rings. If you didn't
Bro, Lord of the Rings inspired so many other things. I mean, we've done a massive deep dive into Warhammer Fantasy, so like there are very clear inspirations you can see there. Heck, we even have the whole Lonely Mountain story. And I'm so glad that the trilogy exists because it is so much fun to go back and just rewatch it from the beginning. Or honestly, watching like movie reactions here on YouTube, just seeing new people to the franchise experience it. It's just so heartwarming. I don't know. It's such a feel-good story.
didn't read the books, you probably saw the movies. They're all great, but some characters are radically changed for drama, some events were reworked, and other little things like that might not be a perfect experience for a book purist. It's fairly well known that Tolkien's son Christopher hates these movies. He doesn't like the fact that they're action films and generally the whole commercialization of his dad's work. I've gotta say, if he was bothered that much by those, he would probably have a heart attack if he saw what else was out there. Games like the Third Age took, quite a few liberties. Quite a few.
No idea what this is.
Regardless, there were some really good licensed games based off of the movies. Most were fun and
Gotcha. I feel like more often than not, whenever a author gets their book adapted into a movie, I usually hear about the ones who are not very satisfied with the work. Now, I can't say I fully understand what that feels like, but I can somewhat see the line of thinking there, where it's like not exactly what I intended or what the image I had in my mind. And that sort of clashes with what a movie has to be in some ways, depending on your perspective. Like there may be certain elements that need to be more dramatized in order for certain moments to work because of the pacing of the film, whereas in the book, it doesn't really have that issue, and it has a different kind of pacing to it because it has way more time to relay all of that information to the reader and get them more accustomed or invested into the world. It's pretty complicated, but ultimately, I still think the movies are great.
quality, though there were some odd ones. But for the most part, they were all based off the New Line Cinema movies. For the most part, there were the others. Back then, Electronic Arts had exclusive right to all the movie games, but Tolkien Enterprises could still make games based off the original work. This is one of those games. I found my copy on accident. I was looking for Empire Earth discs, so I was curious about what people said about it over the years, but I could barely find a thing on it online. You can't buy it digitally anywhere. If you look up Lord of the Rings RTS, 90% of the results will be about Battle for Middle-earth, which makes sense because it's a good series.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything from Battle for Middle-earth. However, I have heard references to it. And considering that we're getting into like RTS games too here on the channel, maybe someday if it's available anywhere. Actually, wait a minute. What did I pause on? Christian dating for Christian singles. 20 hobbies guaranteed to impress. Summoning a succubus. Invader Zim apparel? No. Why don't girls like Warhammer? Oh, man. I think there's plenty of them out there that actually do like Warhammer. And honestly, I've been meaning to get Kiwi into 40k as well, but Still haven't found the time to. We did do some reactions to Warhammer Fantasy at least, so they're there if you guys want to watch it.
To make things even harder, there's also a tabletop game called War of the Ring. So then I felt like I had a duty to tell people about this. War of the Ring is bizarre for a Balrog shit pile of reasons, so let's get right into it. The main menu in my game has a bunch of orcs in it. This might be because I bought the evil edition, but I'm not sure. When this was sold in stores, it had 2 copies. One was the good edition, which showed this elf holding an orc head, but there was an evil edition that was the opposite. That's what I have. So is there an alternate?
That's intriguing. The only good reason I can think of for this being the case is that they both have like different stories to them and they're sold separately. Something like a Fire Emblem Fates situation where you have 3 different cartridges for the 3 different stories. That or this is just a silly marketing gimmick.
That main menu filled with elves and trees and shit? I don't know, but I can't find a picture of one. I have bigger problems anyways because the update server is down. A patch could be what adds widescreen to the game. Otherwise, looking at the game feels like being him. I got it after a lot of searching. This added more resolutions, but no 1080. I did get it working eventually using some tricks. If I don't run the game in admin mode, it won't save my games, so I gotta be careful. It also messed up the loading graphic, but that's not a huge deal to me. I'd rather see more of the game map than be really scrunched in. Keep in mind, I do think this is serviceable without tweaks, but if I can find a better way, I'll do it. Now's a good time to look at the graphics in general. I usually try to separate the art style from the technical graphics, but this time I'm going to go into the art style first. Because if you played another RTS game, this might seem a little familiar. Let's not beat around the bush. The game looks very similar to Battle Realms.
Oh,
we're gonna need a lot more rice to push the Western Devil from our lands. That's what this game's all about.
What the frick? I did not know about any of these. And honestly, I kinda seen screenshots of Warcraft, but I've never actually seen gameplay of it or played it myself.
Some explaining to do. Battle Realms was the first game that Liquid Entertainment made, with War of the Ring being the second. It also came out nearly 8 months before Warcraft 3, so was it a ripoff? Well, the very first public images of Warcraft 3 had the same kind of art style going on, so probably not. They just ended up going in the same direction. Yeah, the art style is similar and they both have the same cinematic cutscenes, but the gameplay could not be more different. Warcraft 3 was generally more traditional, and Battle Realms is about transforming worker units. So artistically, it's kind of hard to call War of the Ring a complete Warcraft 3 ripoff, but that's purely for art style.
The elves of this wood, they will surely help us.
Then let us make haste.
It was clearly influenced by Warcraft 3 in a lot of other ways, but I'll come back to that later. That business aside, I'd say it's pretty gorgeous for an RTS game. It has a lot of good lighting, and some of the levels are really atmospheric. Just look at that burning enemy base. That's some quality. If a building is training units or researching, they have neat little animations. On top of that, buildings have different models for damage levels. This is a lot of effort. Though I have to mention really something I found really unusual about this. This might be the goriest Lord of the Rings game made before Shadow of Mordor. I'm talking about more than blood splatters. I'm talking about enemies sometimes exploding into organs and bones like you're playing a Fallout game. That's pretty graphic for 2002. I don't know, a T just looks a little bit light for that image. You can also toggle the gore in the menu, and Battle Realms has this too. Was this how you got past the ratings board? I mean, I prefer this to buying the gore. I just think it's funny that either...
Yeah, damn. Yeah, from what I recall, from what you guys told me, this was basically just to get around certain ratings for countries that didn't allow it to be sold there if it had this already in the game. But then, like, why price it, right?
The slip past the censors, or it made the game okay to sell to underage people. So on a technical level, it's really impressive. It has more grass than Bonnaroo, but when I look at the art style, I start seeing some issues. The really cartoony art style doesn't feel like it fits in with the source material. If you compare locations in the Bakshi movies to the Peter Jackson films, you'll notice a lot of similarities. This is because Tolkien was a very detailed writer, so throwing that out the window for a mostly generic fantasy look feels like a loss. A lot of the fantasy units look great and were clearly inspired by the Bakshi animation, but some things strike me as odd. It was like there was a mandate that every unit had to be an over-the-top fantasy character. Now, it could be that my eyes were just spoiled by the movies, but the books were written in a really detailed and grounded way. Like the setting was supposed to be an ancient fictional history. Having the entire look be really exaggerated kind of takes away from all that. I'm probably nitpicking, it just seems too generic for the source.
I wonder what the thought process was there. I can imagine there being a scenario where they were told to make the units this way in order for the game to sell easier. Or maybe there were concerns of identifying units. If they went for a more modern art style, then they'd have to go through other kinds of loopholes to make sure that in an RTS game, you were able to recognize the units that you were using. Maybe they just felt like this art style fit the game more and it made it pop more from the backgrounds, who knows.
But then there's the sound. War of the Ring has some great voice acting.
Our buildings can only be built on this corrupted land.
Yeah, RTS games in general usually have great voice acting, with the one exception being the video that we checked out last week. Was it Kingdom Under Fire? The English voice acting for that was not so great.
That, half-wit, is why you need a slave master!
Good idea, Master.
I saw him approach some time ago.
Ah! You're still here? Target practice.
That sounds like the devil. I think they gave the voice actors for the evil side a lot more freedom to interpret their role. The narrator sounds like an evil wizard.
The Dark Lord's forces are pressing into Rohan.
You know, I appreciate some of the overtop evilness. We got some of this as well in Dawn of War, and the evil characters are usually like the most fun to just listen to them talk. They have so much gravel and so much depth to their voice.
With their supplies steadily dwindling, Grishnach is ordered to send more slaves to work their camps.
There's some great performances from some pretty prominent voice actors in this. I didn't notice any stock sounds either, which was a problem in some RTS games. But the big thing is the music. A lot of the maps in the game have unique tracks of music for each side. During editing, I found out they can complement each other. Let's take a listen.
All right. Oh, this is where it's at. Holy, that is really cool. How did Mandalore find this in editing anyways? Did he just listen to it and was like, wait a minute, this could probably work on this, and then just overlaid both tracks? I always love it though when a video game has these little, well, I wouldn't really call it Easter eggs, but just cool things about the soundtrack. Outside of just being really, really good music. It goes to show that the people working on the music had a lot of fun doing what they were doing and had some really neat ideas that hopefully we get to see more in the gaming industry.
While a lot of it is generic, there are some really great tracks in here. The copies on YouTube aren't in great quality, but I found out why. They're packed up in an H2O file that only this game and Battle Realms uses. So I went on one of those.
I have never heard of an H2O file. And why specifically H2O? Is it related at all to water?
Forum adventures. Eventually got an unpacker working to save the music, and then it turned out it was already rescued on Proto Man. So that was precious time wasted, but you can find the soundtrack online if you're interested. Despite my issues with it, overall I think the game has a pretty excellent presentation. You'd think something this obscure would be really cheap quality, but it's not. If I stopped here, it would look like an underrated gem, but this is a video game. So now I'm finally gonna get into the gameplay. Your main source of fun will be the campaigns. I'm gonna start with the one for the good side. If I just said good campaign, you might be confused. The first mission has you playing as dwarves retaking the Iron Hills. I was already running into a few issues. You might have noticed I'm having to drag the mouse around to pan.
Pathing issues?
For whatever reason, the arrow keys are what you use to scroll. I tried rebinding them, but the game doesn't seem to understand. That's annoying, but not a deal breaker. Your main mission is to go dump rocks on the enemy orcs. It's nothing too crazy for an RTS game. You research tech and pump out units. You only need to worry about 2 resources, food and ore. The same thing goes for the evil side. Each deposit is very limited, so it's important to have good map control. War of the Ring attempts to mix things up with fate points. They're generated by having units in combat, and they're pretty useful. The more powerful hero units will require fate points to unlock. You can also use them to buy powerful hero abilities. You know, like the Ring of Power. It's only a unit cloak in this game. A lot of these abilities...
Where are we in the timeline when it comes to the Lord of the Rings series? I'm assuming this has to be like before the movies if we have the Ring of Power, or I suppose a ring, because all of the the humans, the dwarves, the elves, they all possess rings, right, at some point? Before Sauron crafted the one ring to rule them all? Hopefully I'm not getting this wrong. I'm pretty sure this was like literally the first few minutes of the movie, of them telling us all this.
Are exceptionally powerful, and they carry through the campaign. Heroes level up to gain stat bonuses, but not any new abilities. Those are for the fate points. But that's not all they can do.
Okay. Damn! Hey!
Both sides have different powers to harm their enemies or buff their own troops. If you spend a lot of points, you could summon a big dick unit like an Ent or a Balrog, but they have a limited lifespan. These can really turn the tide in a fight, so it's usually a good idea to have some saved for if things get harsh. It's an improvement over the similar system that was in Battle Realms. I think this could encourage the biggest turtles to fight a little bit, just to get some of these fate points. There's one the good side has that buffs one of your heroes but makes them unable to be respawned. This is good for those missions where if the hero dies, you lose. I wish the evil side had this.
Grishnoch has been defeated. There will be no man's flesh today.
Looks like meat's off the menu. That's what happens when I don't micro Warg Riders to get more fate points. Hero abilities operate strictly off cooldowns, no mana or magic or anything like that. They're also much simpler compared to Warcraft 3 hero units. Most can be maxed out in the mission you get them in. Getting back on track, the second dwarf mission is where I scratched my head. Gimli is searching for Thorin Oakenshield's ancient WMD. You need to see this.
Tills with orc blood, as a warning to others who would invade our land.
Wait, no. We're seeing Gimli here. And didn't we see Strider earlier too in one of the cutscenes? So no, it's not happening in the past. It should be happening in the current timeline, but I guess we're just taking some creative liberties, perhaps. For the sake of the game, yeah, it can work.
Hands.
Uh-oh. No!
It's wonderful to see you, Gandalf!
Yeah! Yeah!
Got Monsieur Uncle Bilbo's purse.
So the estate says that these movies are a travesty. To that I say, someone there approved the orc genocide. This was licensed by the estate, so maybe they should have been looking more at these. That thing should basically be a war crime. I would say Gimli should probably go on trial, but his height is probably punishment enough. This is bizarre to me. You would think that the estate would try to keep things closer to the books, but no, it deviates more than the movies. Does anyone remember Salim? She's the leader of the Haradrim and dual-wield scimitars.
It appears that I have arrived just in time.
Excuse me? Who are you? She kinda looks like... I forget what they're called, actually. You know, the really tall tan ladies from the Zelda series. She really looks like the lady who controlled the Divine Beast in Breath of the Wild.
I don't remember the part where they took over Rohan either. So if you were hoping this game would at least be a really good book adaptation, then no, that's not here either. Eventually you get to pick between which mission to do next.
Too.
It's quickly becoming apparent that just having two factions really hurt the game. It makes the racial missions feel limited because you're missing core parts of your army. It doesn't help that the story to push you forward is really bland. Plus, a lot of the cutscenes are janky. Like even in the Orc War Crime earlier, it feels like the timing for the events are just a little bit off. They may not have had enough time to clean them up more. Overall, the good campaign just feels very generic. The game also has a big problem with stealth units. I'm getting really bad flashbacks. In a normal RTS game...
The freaking Tau units, man. When we were playing Dark Crusade, it was actually kind of manageable. But then again, I was playing as the Necrons, and I just got the upgrade for my commander to see them. As long as you have the units that can see the invisible units around, it's fine. That being said, I was playing on just normal difficulty, so I don't know any of the horrors that playing on a higher difficulty may introduce.
A stealth unit is like a scout or maybe a glass cannon, but in this the archers are beefy and they dump out damage. You can't go wrong spamming them. You just brap the detector unit and you win. Towers can't stop you either because they don't have stealth detection. This goes for both sides too.
Kinda unbalanced.
You have to garrison a wraith if you're playing as the evil side, or a ranger if you're in the forces of good. It's the same thing for the evil side because their slayers have the best DPS. I really wish they gave them faction names because saying side all the time really doesn't roll off the tongue. The problem is enemies spawn endlessly in some missions, so you want to do this. You have a limited economy. Meanwhile, Gothmog is tapping into a goddamn Dyson sphere. Was this in the Silmarillion? It's frustrating, and this is on every difficulty. The only thing it does is buff enemy unit stats. If you don't use the Cloak Boys, you could be grinded down in a war of attrition. The campaign also starts having some bizarre design decisions. I thought Helm's Deep would be a pure combat mission, which it was, but they reoriented the camera so it doesn't match up with the minimap. This is for a defense mission where you need to guard certain walls. This makes that a lot more confusing. It says you can reorient it, but the button doesn't do anything. This level reveals a lot of problems in the game's combat systems. RTS games that came out years before this had unit stances. Commands like a patrol order work, but others are a little finicky. Including a patrol order, you have 3 stances. You'd think you'd have a stand ground option for archers, but no, you have to guard an area. If you do this on anything other than flat ground, you're gonna have problems. Where are you going? Why won't this work? The in-game hold position just makes your units stand there not attacking. I thought video games decided that's not what hold position means. Why does it work this way? The game already has pathfinding issues. I can accept...
Yeah, pathfinding issues with these older RTS games, I feel like is just gonna be a normal occurrence. That's just how things were, and that's kind of how things still are sometimes. It is very frustrating, though, when you're trying to get your units to somewhere and they just end up dilly-dallying because they can't figure out how to do that, despite the ground that way being clearly flat and probably easy to walk on, but... You know, I'm not a video game character, so what do I know?
But standing and shooting being unreliable is ridiculous. But it gets worse, because an archer can shoot even if something's in the way.
Are you, what?
Thunk, thunk. So your wall archers can easily be hitting nothing. Someone throw me in the river already. You could choose to do a different mission first instead. There's a lot more going on here. There are spawning patrols of endgame units who want to crush your base. But the worst part are the ring wraiths. They have a power where they can teleport on corrupted land. That's already pretty spooky, so naturally this map has tons of respawning ones, and they can pop in at any time. It never ends. That's harsh enough. But then you have goblin masters constantly running into your base trying to light a mud sign over them. Oh god, he made it. Jesus Christ. Some of these missions are...
That sounds like it's going to be purely up to RNG then at that point, if you're going to be able to defeat them. Because if they come in endless hordes and you have limited resources, good luck. I would assume then that the Battle of Middle-earth games are just a lot better when it comes to these sort of game balances. Considering that's the one I at least hear about, as opposed to this one.
Noxious, but none get as bad as that ever again. I played this campaign to the very end on hard. I didn't feel super challenged by a lot of it, just kind of annoyed. So I won the map outside Mordor. What's next?
The might of the Dark Lord had been countered. Gondor's steel bested orc blades, and the blood of Sauron's minions.
Well, the epic conclusion to the saga is a voiceover during the credits. I didn't expect a lot, but that's kind of disappointing. Let's check out the dark side. Your first task is getting goblin workers through a maze because the old camp ate all of theirs. I already found myself a bit more invested in this. They can only construct their buildings on corrupted land, which the slave masters make, as we saw earlier. The forces of good need to build houses to increase their population, but evil just builds more slave masters. You might think they field bigger armies, but no. Most of their basic units cost 3 population points or whatever they are. Really cheap and bad spearmen are 1, so I found myself having population issues a lot more. This mission didn't have respawning enemies, it just had a lot of them. I decided to stop playing on hard after this one. By the end, I had no food and had to spam slave masters to try and get through it. They're even weaker than spearmen, so this wasn't ideal.
Fucking slaves, get your ass back here!
I was also starting to see really blatant bugs. Their upper halves are just gone. It's only this one group of enemies in the level, then I never see this problem again. When you make it to the end of the level, they just eat the new workers.
Just in time for dinner.
To be fair, that's consistent. Nothing really stood out to me in these early campaign missions. Their commander does have a funny run, but it's not as good as Legolas prancing.
Oh man. That immediately made me think of this particular walking animation from Zero Time Dilemma. Pretty much on par. I guess like animating walking animations is just hard to make it look natural.
But I ended up getting a game-breaking bug in one of the later missions, and I don't mean Shalab. Saruman is fusing ghosts and orcs to make Uruk-hai. I don't know if it worked exactly that way. Anyways, you need to move a wraith and an orc on a sacrificial pit. So I move an orc there and I can't use him anymore, but when I move the wraith there, nothing happens. The game is stuck, I can't progress. So I restart the mission and put the ghost on first. Then I put the orc on and it works perfectly. I was confused.
Interesting.
Why did the reverse order lock me out of my game before? I was really scratching my head until I looked at the objective menu. Oh, the ghost objective is on top, so if I put the orc on first, I lose. This game is a mystery. Despite this, I found the evil campaign a lot more fun to play. I thought their units and abilities were interesting. For example, the Witch King can use fate points to turn wraiths into Nazgul.
Awesome.
There were significantly less maps that had endless swarms of enemies. I guess this is because narratively you're supposed to be the evil swarm now. At the same time, it's still nothing exceptional. It's still really cookie cutter for other games of its time. Even though it's a prequel to the saga, it still isn't very interesting. Right when you think the story is built up to something, the same thing happens as the good campaign.
While the Dark Lord gazed upon another stronghold of the free peoples of Middle-earth.
No thank you. Despite all the maps, the skirmish games.
So essentially, despite playing the Dark campaign, you still lose because it's a prequel to the series? That kinda sucks. At least give us an alternate timeline where I win. We've already taken so many creative liberties with this one, you might as well.
Aren't very interesting either. The most standout kind was Catapult. It's a spin on Capture the Flag where you try to control the war crime siege engine, but it's not that good. It doesn't surprise me that this didn't last long in multiplayer, especially when you compare it to the vibrant Warcraft 3 modding scene.
What is going on here? What is that?
Looking at all this, it's no surprise the game got buried. Battle for Middle-earth came out less than 4 months later. I think that's a much better game in about every way, and
oh, only 4 months later. Just a straight up better RTS in the same universe. Yeah, no way this game is living. That is truly unfortunate, but it is what it is. When the better thing comes out, that's just how it goes.
Most people would agree with me. If War of the Ring was an underrated gem, or maybe a really funny bad game, would be talked about more. But it's neither of those. It's an okay game. People remember great games or really bad games, but things like this, it's easy to forget. It's not the worst game I ever played. I've played plenty of RTS titles with more.
This sentiment makes me think of Conker's Bad Fur Day, where the platforming isn't exceptional. In fact, it's kind of bad, but the whole premise and the characters and the absurdity and how much of it is just straight up a shitpost kinda immortalize the game. So yeah, you either have to be really damn good, so bad that it's funny, or just taking the piss out of it, you know? For people to at least find something that they can grab onto when it comes to your game. The worst thing you can possibly be is okay.
It's a Warcraft 3 remix, not really much more or much less than that. If they had risked a little more in the gameplay mechanics, it could have been a classic. Right now its legacy, if anyone will remember it, will be a generic game that had a really special license. But for me, it left some memories that will never go away, and I'll truly treasure the time I did spend with this game. Actually, I saw it in a magazine in 2003 and thought it'd be good, and I was wrong. This game tricked you into buying it.
I hear them, precious.
It's not Andy Serkis. The false hype train ruined me, but more people will know about it now, and that's something. Thank you for taking this magical journey with me. I'm still taking game requests, even though the list is getting pretty big. I appreciate them, and I try to get back to you when I have a chance. Also, thank you for all the fan art. This is really high quality and humbling, so thank you. Every piece is appreciated. I'll see you in the next video when I discuss robot pricing.
Honestly though, going back to see some of these like older games and the things that they tried to do and maybe weren't able to achieve, but still made a good attempt at it, I just find it incredibly endearing. Kind of cute. It's just games from a much different era from what I'm used to, I suppose. Maybe some of you guys even grew up playing this game. If you did, let me know what you guys thought of it. It feels like it was kind of just okay at best here. And unfortunately, the IP itself just wasn't enough to carry it based off of some fundamentally flawed gameplay. And it was also kind of nice to see Mandalore's more humble beginnings. Like, you can definitely see how he's improved with his reviews over the years, especially when you go back to see some of his older ones like this one. But yeah, dudes, I'm gonna go check out the Return of the King review next, so look out for that one. But that's gonna be it for me today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you in the next one.